America is obsessed with muscle cars, and Detroit is caught in an arms race that plays out on NASCAR's high banks. Suddenly, a machine rolls onto the scene that doesn't look like anything else on the road. A car with a mile-long nose, a wing taller than your shoulders, and an aura of danger that made even seasoned racers gulp. That car was the 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona, and behind its outrageous looks lay secrets, twists of engineering, marketing, politics, and even folklore. Today, we're diving into 20 weird facts you didn't know about the Charger Daytona. And wait till you hear why number 1 almost never made it to production. The Charger Daytona wasn't just another muscle car. It was Dodge's moonshot. Built for one reason only: to win at NASCAR. Its purpose-built aero tricks, radical styling, and short-lived production run turned it into one of the most mythologized cars of the 1960s. By the end, it became both a sales oddball and a racing legend. Stick with me as we count down the weirdest, most surprising facts. And hey, if this blend of history and horsepower is your thing, hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss the next deep dive. Number 20. The first NASCAR car to break 200 miles per hour. The Daytona wasn't just fast, it was history-making. On March 24, 1970, Buddy Baker strapped into a Dodge Charger Daytona at Talladega Superspeedway and made headlines worldwide. He officially became the first driver in NASCAR history to break the 200 miles per hour barrier. That speed was mind-blowing at the time. Remember, the average family sedan barely hit 100. The Daytona's nose cone and massive wing weren't just decoration. They were the secret sauce that sliced drag by nearly 20%. Here's the kicker. Dodge didn't just want to win races. They wanted to humiliate Ford and Chevrolet. By being the first car to crack the 200 mark, Dodge turned the Daytona into a rolling middle finger to Detroit rivals. Collectors today prize any Daytona with a documented racing history, and if you ever see one with period-correct Goodyear blue streaks, you're looking at NASCAR's moon landing. And yet, as you'll see in number 18, the very speed that made the Daytona famous also made it too dangerous to survive unchanged. Number 19. Built for NASCAR, but sold to civilians. Here's something bizarre. The Daytona was engineered strictly as a race car, yet Dodge had to sell at least 500 to the public to meet NASCAR's homologation rules. They ended up building 503. That's right, just over 500 buyers in 1969 could walk into a Dodge dealer and drive home a car designed to conquer Daytona and Talladega. Imagine rolling up to a grocery store in one. The 18-inch steel nose cone was prone to parking lot scrapes. The 23-inch wing towered over traffic. It wasn't subtle. It was a UFO on wheels. Dodge dealers actually struggled to sell them. Some sat on lots for months, and a few were discounted or re-nosed back into regular Chargers. For collectors today, spotting an authentic Daytona means checking the VIN tag and looking for factory-welded rear window plugs, a telltale difference from a Charger 500. And if you think homologation rules are odd, wait until number 16, when we reveal a prototype so rare, most dealers never even knew it existed. Number 18. Too fast for its own good. The Daytona's dominance was so complete, it actually scared NASCAR. Drivers were hitting speeds that made tires explode and engines melt down. Richard Petty, who drove rival Plymouth Superbirds, admitted the aero cars were nearly too much for the tracks. NASCAR President Bill France Sr. stepped in, alarmed that the sport might become lethally unsafe. Here's the twist. Instead of banning the Daytona outright, NASCAR changed the rules. For 1971, they limited engine displacement to 305 cubic inches for winged cars, effectively neutering them. Overnight, the Daytona went from hero to outlaw. Racers either detuned them or parked them. Collectors today point out that this rule change is what froze the Daytona in amber, an icon of one insane year where speed limits didn't exist. Spotter's tip: original 426 Hemi cars are unicorns. Only 70 left the factory. And if you think the ban was dramatic, number 14 will prove the government also had its eye on this car. Number 17. The wing was taller than a man's waist. At 23 inches high, the Daytona's rear wing was taller than the average man's beltline. Why so big? Contrary to legend, it wasn't just to generate downforce. The truth? It needed to clear the trunk lid so owners could still open it. Engineering necessity created one of the most flamboyant visual signatures in car history. The kicker? Wind tunnel tests showed the wing worked even better at highway speeds, adding stability that ordinary Chargers lacked. On the street, owners said the car tracked like it was on rails. On the track, it gave drivers the confidence to push 190 plus. Collectors know the giveaway is the pedestal base of the wing. Authentic Daytonas have unique reinforcement plates in the trunk to handle the downforce. Repro cars often miss this. And here's a teaser. If you think that's strange, number 13 involves a nose cone experiment that went even further off the rails. Number 16. The hidden headlight. Trick one of the quirkiest features? The Daytona's nose cone hid vacuum-operated headlight doors, an aero necessity that created headaches for owners. Unlike a regular Charger's flip headlights, these were tucked inside the fiberglass nose. The vacuum system was finicky, and many owners complained about lights failing in rain or cold weather. But there's more. Dodge engineers allegedly tested fixed headlights behind clear plexiglass covers, which would have been even slipperier in the wind tunnel. NASCAR didn't allow it, so the vacuum doors stayed. Today, restorers groan when these systems fail, since replacement actuators are rare and pricey. For collectors, an authentic nose cone is gold. Spotter's tip: original ones are fiberglass and weigh far less than modern reproductions. If you tap it and it sounds like a drum, you might be looking at real factory work. And speaking of nose cones, wait until number 12, where we'll explore a lost design that looked more like a jet fighter. Number 15. A rear window like no other. The Daytona's rear window wasn't just a styling quirk. It was a desperate aerodynamic fix. Engineers discovered the standard Charger's tunneled backlight created massive turbulence at speed. Their solution? A specially fabricated plug that flattened the rear glass angle and smoothed airflow. It looked odd, but it worked. Here's the kicker. The plug was welded into place and finished with unique trim. To the casual eye, it seemed normal, but sharp spotters can instantly tell a Daytona or Charger 500 by the flatter back window and wider moldings. This fix wasn't pretty. It created extra body seams and sometimes rust issues, but it gave Dodge the stability it needed at 190 miles per hour. Civilian owners, meanwhile, grumbled about poor visibility and leaky seals. Collectors know that a genuine window plug is one of the hardest things to fake. If you see a supposed Daytona clone without those welded seams under the trim, walk away. And speaking of fakes, number 10 will reveal why some Daytonas disappeared under the radar entirely. Number 14. Uncle Sam got involved. Even the US government had opinions about the Daytona. In the early 1970s, consumer safety advocates raised alarms about cars with wings and nose cones dominating the streets. The Daytona looked like a rocket sled in traffic, and rumors spread that its wing could slice through pedestrians or even destabilize following cars. While the pedestrian decapitation story is urban legend, federal regulators did scrutinize the car. Insurance companies also slapped heavy surcharges on buyers under 25, making it nearly impossible for young hotshoes to afford one. Sales tanked. Here's the twist. These pressures, government scrutiny, insurance hikes, and looming emissions rules, ensured the Daytona lasted only one model year. What was meant as a NASCAR weapon became a one-hit wonder in showrooms. Collectors today relish this forbidden fruit status. Spotter's tip? If the car still carries its original window sticker showing the insurance surcharge or dealer markup, that paperwork alone can add thousands at auction. And if you think Uncle Sam's involvement was strange, wait until number 9, when Hollywood decided the Daytona needed a starring role. Number 13. The nose cone nearly didn't happen. Here's the part nobody talks about. The Daytona's nose cone was almost scrapped. Dodge engineers had originally mocked up a shorter, less dramatic cone, hoping for a compromise between styling and aero. But wind tunnel data from Lockheed's Georgia facility proved only a full 18-inch extension could cut drag to competitive levels. The problem? It looked absurd. Chrysler executives balked at showing dealers a car with a beak like a Concorde jet. Some even worried customers would laugh. But racing boss Bob Roger pushed it through, famously saying, "It's not for looks, it's for winning." The cone itself was fiberglass, lightweight but fragile. On the street, even small fender benders destroyed it. Replacements today cost thousands, and original factory stampings are rarer than Hemi blocks. For spotters, the giveaway is the fit. Real nose cones have factory-correct seams where they bolt to the fenders. Clones often smooth them over. And here's a teaser. If you think the cone almost killed the Daytona, number 7 will show you how Plymouth's version nearly sank Dodge's pride altogether. Number 12. The jet fighter prototype. Here's a rumor that still sparks debates at car shows. Allegedly, Chrysler Design Studios toyed with an even more radical Daytona prototype, featuring an extended canopy and sharper nose, closer to a jet fighter than a stock Charger. Some period sketches survive, showing a wedge-shaped front end without a traditional bumper. Why? Because Dodge wanted every possible edge in the aero wars, but NASCAR rules required cars to remain recognizably stock, so the wilder concepts never left the design studio. Still, whispers claim one fiberglass mock-up was built and later destroyed. Even more shocking? Collectors report spotting oddball Charger test mules in Michigan junkyards during the early 70s, possibly linked to this experiment. None have surfaced with proof, making it one of Mopar's enduring mysteries. Spotter's tip: genuine Daytonas always carried chrome bumper outlines molded into the nose cone, a detail missing from rumored prototypes. And if you think these wild experiments ended in the 60s, number 6 will prove Dodge wasn't done pushing limits decades later. Number 11. Dealers couldn't give them away. Here's the irony. What's now a $1 million collectible was once a hard sell. In 1969, Dodge dealers struggled to move the Daytona. Its price was steep, and its styling was divisive. Reports suggest some sat unsold well into 1970, with dealers discounting them, or even swapping nose cones and wings off to make them resemble regular Chargers. Why? Because most buyers wanted muscle cars that looked aggressive, but still street cool. The Daytona looked like a spaceship, and unless you lived near a NASCAR track, its purpose wasn't obvious. Dealers joked they had a winged elephant on the showroom floor. Collectors today drool over dealer delete stories, where original Daytonas were neutered back to stock Chargers. Spotter's tip: always check for telltale factory reinforcement plates in the trunk. and VIN code starting with XX29. Signs you're looking at the real deal. But here's the kicker. The very fact dealers couldn't sell them is why so few survive today. And number 5? That one shows how a single Hollywood moment rewrote the car's destiny. Number 10. Some Daytonas were de-winged. Here's the kicker. Not every Daytona kept its giant wing. Believe it or not, some early owners found the car too embarrassing or too impractical for daily driving. Dealers occasionally swapped the rear deck for a regular Charger lid, removing the signature spoiler. Others were altered later in life by owners who wanted normal muscle car looks. The twist? Those de-winged cars today are heartbreakers. A genuine Daytona missing its wing loses huge value, unless it can be restored with an original piece. And here's the painful part. Back in the 70s, original wings were sometimes tossed in dumpsters when cars were customized or wrecked. Spotter's tip: a true Daytona trunk has reinforcement brackets under the lid. If they're there, you're looking at a car that was born with a wing, even if it's long gone. Collectors call these wing deletes, not to be confused with factory order codes, since Dodge never offered such a delete package. And if you think removing wings was strange, wait until number 4, when we uncover how the Superbird's styling nearly cannibalized the Daytona's entire purpose. Number 9. Hollywood made it a cult icon. At first, the Daytona was too radical to sell, but Hollywood changed everything. The car's towering wing and nose cone made it irresistible to directors looking for futuristic, outrageous vehicles. Most famously, a Charger Daytona appeared in the 1980s TV show, The Dukes of Hazzard. Though the show's main star was a '69 Charger dubbed the General Lee, a bright red Daytona with a black wing showed up in later seasons, instantly capturing attention. Even more shocking? In recent years, the Daytona got a boost from the Fast and Furious franchise, where Vin Diesel's character drove one in Fast and Furious 6. That single scene reignited collector demand among younger fans who hadn't even been alive when NASCAR outlawed the car. Collectors call this the Hollywood bump. Cars tied to screen appearances can sell for double, sometimes more, than similar examples without a pop culture link. Spotter's tip: genuine screen-used cars often carry unique scars or modifications for filming, making them instantly recognizable to insiders. And speaking of doubling in value, 3 will show you how one auction shattered every expectation in the Mopar world. Number 8. A dealer in Canada pulled a switcheroo. Here's the part nobody talks about. At least one Canadian Dodge dealer allegedly swapped VIN tags from unsold Daytonas to standard Chargers just to move inventory. The rumor, supported by Mopar historians, suggests buyers thought they were getting a regular Charger, but drove home with Daytona DNA under the skin. Why? Because dealers were desperate. In Canada especially, insurance penalties for high-performance cars were brutal. A Daytona might sit unsold for a year. By disguising them, dealers offloaded cars that otherwise would have bankrupted them in floor plan fees. For collectors today, these VIN switch cars are nightmares. Some surface decades later with body features inconsistent with their paperwork, sparking heated debates at auctions. The twist? Courts have even been involved, ruling some cars authentic and others fraudulent. Spotter's tip: always check multiple stamping points on a Daytona: core support, trunk lip, -VIN, and hidden stampings. If they don't line up, walk away. And if you think Canadian dealers bending rules sounds extreme, number 2 will prove Chrysler itself cut corners when the clock was ticking. Number 7. Plymouth's Superbird stole its thunder. Here's the irony: the Charger Daytona's own sibling nearly killed it. Just a year later, Plymouth launched the 1970 Superbird, essentially a reskinned Daytona with more cartoonish styling. NASCAR star Richard Petty had defected to Ford, and Plymouth needed him back. Their condition? Build a Daytona-like car under the Plymouth name. The result? The Superbird. With its sharper nose and even gaudier graphics, it outsold the Daytona and got more press. NASCAR purists respected both, but the Superbird stole headlines, and Petty. Dodge brass grumbled that their moonshot suddenly looked like yesterday's news. Here's the twist. Collectors now often pit the two against each other. Which is rarer? The Daytona, 503 built, wins. Which is flashier? The Superbird. Auction houses say Daytona buyers are often purists, while Superbird fans lean toward flamboyant collectors. Spotter's tip: the Daytona's nose cone is longer and sleeker. The Superbird's is shorter with a beak-like ridge. But if sibling rivalry sounds dramatic, number 1 will show why the Daytona's very existence almost got strangled in the crib. Number 6. Chrysler's secret wind tunnel. Back in 1968, Chrysler quietly rented Lockheed's Georgia wind tunnel, the same one used for fighter jets. At the time, most automakers relied on crude clay models or open road testing. Dodge, however, took aerospace science and applied it to NASCAR. The Daytona was one of the first American production cars born entirely out of wind tunnel research. Engineers discovered that a single degree change in nose cone pitch meant several miles per hour on track. Even the rear wing's height was wind tunnel optimized, not guessed. Why? Because Dodge knew Ford's Talladega and Mercury Cyclone Spoiler 2 were coming. The aero war was on, and Chrysler wanted the nuclear option. The Daytona became that weapon. Spotter's tip: original engineering photos sometimes surface, showing Charger models mounted on wind tunnel rigs. Collectors treasure these as much as the cars themselves, since they prove just how cutting-edge Chrysler's approach was. And speaking of cutting edge, number 1 will show how corporate politics almost cut this entire project off before it started. Number 5. The forgotten color codes. Most people picture the Daytona in hemi-orange or bright red, but Dodge offered it in a range of wild 1969 colors. Factory paint codes included colors like T5 copper, R4 red, and even B5 bright blue metallic. But here's the kicker. Only a handful of cars were sprayed in top banana yellow, making them unicorns. Collectors call these oddball shades one-of-ones, and values skyrocket when a rare paint code is documented on the fender tag. Even stranger, some dealers reportedly repainted cars before selling them, trying to make them more palatable to conservative buyers. That means a Daytona sitting today in a muted brown might hide a wild high-impact Mopar shade underneath. Spotter's tip: always check the original fender tag for the paint code. It's the Rosetta Stone of authenticity. If it matches a rare hue, you're looking at a Daytona worth several times more than its monochrome cousins. And if rare colors sound shocking, number 3 will reveal a price tag that made collectors' jaws hit the floor. Number 4. NASCAR drivers had mixed feelings. You'd think every racer loved the Daytona. Wrong. While Buddy Baker and Charlie Glotzbach praised its speed, others found it intimidating, even terrifying. The nose cone reduced front-end lift, but it also changed steering feel dramatically. At nearly 200 miles per hour, small corrections became hair-raising. Here's the twist. Some veteran drivers refused to race it. They felt safer in the older, blunter Charger 500. Richard Petty himself admitted the wing cars were ahead of the tires, meaning Goodyear rubber couldn't keep up with the aero. Blowouts at Talladega became common, fueling NASCAR's decision to regulate them out. Collectors today prize cars with documented racing pedigrees, even if the drivers complained. Spotter's tip. Racing Daytonas often show subtle scars in the wheel wells and undercarriage from track modifications. These aren't flaws, they're proof of battle. And if you think drivers feared the car, number 2 will show how Chrysler itself nearly killed the Daytona before fans ever saw it. Number 3. Auction prices went stratospheric. For decades, the Daytona was a curiosity. Valuable, yes, but not insane. That changed in the 2000s, when collectors began fighting over Hemi cars. The record? A 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona with the legendary 426 HEMI engine, sold for over $900,000 at Mecum. Here's the kicker. That's nearly $1 million for a car dealer's once discounted to move. Even ordinary 440-powered Daytonas now bring $200,000 to $400,000 at auction, depending on originality and color. Paperwork, build sheets, fender tags, original invoices adds a multiplier. Spotter's tip. Beware of clones. Because values skyrocketed, countless regular Chargers were converted into fake Daytonas. Serious collectors bring experts to verify welds, stampings, and nose cone construction. This explosion in value cemented the Daytona as one of the ultimate Mopars. But here's the twist. Its survival as a legend almost didn't happen at all, as you'll hear in number 1. Number 2. Chrysler nearly pulled the plug. The Daytona project wasn't beloved inside Chrysler. It was expensive, controversial, and divisive. Some execs thought the Charger 500 had already solved the aero problem. Others balked at the cost of tooling for a one-off nose and wing. Period memos suggest the program came within weeks of being cancelled. Why did it survive? Because Dodge brass feared losing NASCAR entirely. Ford's Torino Talladega was poised to dominate. If Dodge didn't answer, their racing credibility and dealership traffic would evaporate. The part nobody talks about. It was a handful of passionate engineers, led by Gary Romberg and Bob Roger, who fought tooth and nail. Without their persistence, the Daytona might have stayed a sketch in the design studio. Collectors today know this near-death story adds to the aura. Every authentic Daytona is a survivor of both the racetrack and the boardroom. And that sets the stage for number 1, the fact that proves just how fragile the whole program was. Number 1. It almost never made it to production. Here's the big reveal. The Daytona came within a hair of never reaching showrooms. Why? Because the tooling wasn't ready. Chrysler scrambled to meet NASCAR's homologation deadline, hand-finishing early nose cones and welding window plugs with almost artisanal care. Some insiders claim fewer than 10 true pilot cars were built, rushed through with mismatched parts and experimental finishes. These pre-production cars were tested, photographed, and in some cases destroyed. Without them, Dodge wouldn't have met the NASCAR entry deadline, and the Daytona would have been disqualified before it ever turned a lap. The twist? That desperation explains why production numbers froze at 503, just barely over the 500 minimum. Dodge cut it as close as humanly possible. If one shipment had been delayed, or one prototype wrecked in testing, the Daytona legend might never have existed. Collectors today view every surviving Daytona as a miracle. Each car represents not just racing history, but corporate defiance, born in chaos and saved by sheer willpower. And that's why number 1 isn't just weird. It redefines how we see the entire muscle car era. The 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona wasn't supposed to be pretty. It wasn't supposed to be practical. It was supposed to win. And in one wild year, it did more than that. It rewrote the limits of what a stock car could be. From its towering wing to its fragile nose cone, from unsellable showroom freak to $1 million collectible, The Daytona embodies both the genius and the madness of the muscle car era. Which fact blew your mind? The government paranoia, the unsold dealer cars, or that 200-mile-per-hour record? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear. And if you enjoyed this dive into Mopar history, make sure to check out our deep dives on the Superbird and the Hemi Cuda. Until next time, remember, legends aren't born, they're built, and sometimes they sprout wings.